Hi everybody, welcome to Designated Driver, a show about ordinary people talking about extraordinary things in technology. Now, it's just the two of us today. It's Sven and I talking about privacy. How are you going, Sven?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing, Beck?
I'm very good, thank you. And I think this is a really good opportunity for us to do a little in-betweener, in between episodes, just to let people know about privacy. And I guess one of the big questions is, why does privacy matter?
So privacy matters always. However, the reason we're talking about privacy now and why I guess it's bubbled to the surface as something that we should be talking about is because it's taken a slightly different nuance in our current lockdown and global COVID-19 scenario. So well worth just bringing up a few things to bring it top of mind for people, I think.
Okay, and I think that now that we've got children at home being homeschooled, it's a really good opportunity to perhaps give some tips to parents on protecting their children's privacy.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things actually. So there's the children's privacy that has changed just slightly because of COVID-19, and there's the work privacy. So we'll talk a bit about that as well. But let's start with the children. So what's actually changed over here? A couple of things have changed. One is, of course, you've got a lot of children learning from home, and a lot of that learning from home has video conferencing with cameras. That's unusual. That hasn't happened en masse. But also what's unusual about it is you have much younger children now participating on these online things. So we're not talking about the teenagers that have been doing this all along, and they've got their ways of doing things. These are the ones that are less aware. So I guess the discussion from that perspective is, as a parent, a non-technical parent, someone that doesn't necessarily know what the nuances are, what should I be thinking about? And I thought we'd cover a few of those things.
That's fantastic. So what are some of the things that you can tell parents that they need to be aware of?
So most of what you need to be aware of comes down to common sense. And the best way to sort of set that up is, as a parent, try to visualize this, right? When you access the internet, or when you are putting video or anything on the internet, it's the same visualization as putting yourself at the front door of your home, opening it wide open, but on the other end of that door, when you open it up, the rest of the world is right there. So good people are there, bad people are there, drug addicts are there, pedophiles are there, police are there. Everyone is right in front of you and within grasping range. Now take that visualization and put your child in front of you, all right? That's what you're basically doing when you put your child in front of a computer on the internet. Now that sounds all very dramatic, and it's meant to sound dramatic, because what you need to now do is just get back to basics. If you were in front of that door, what would you do to protect your child? And a couple of basic things to protect your child is have a look at what they're actually putting on the internet from a visual perspective. And I'm honing in on visual, of course, because that's the nuance, that's the thing that's changed. So simple things like, is your child wearing a school uniform? Why is that important? Well, because quite often they'd have an emblem, and that emblem would tell anyone who's watching where your child goes to school. That's a bit of information that is not necessary on the internet. Equally, what's behind your child? What part of if they're doing work from schooling from home in their bedrooms or in a different part of the house, what photographs are behind? Because if it's family photographs, you know now that this young child has a brother or a sister or a family member or whatever the case may be. Or even pictures of unicorns or whatever that child likes. These are the sorts of things from a hacker perspective or from a bad person perspective formulate your capability, essentially. So as a parent, I'm not saying do what you're doing, Beck, be in front of a flat, dark, foreboding wall, but be mindful. Just be mindful. Yeah, you took it next level. Be mindful what you are putting on the internet. And there's a reason for that. And I'll take you through a simple parental example. If the school, for example, in the old days, a month or two ago, said, we're going to do exercise, and I want you to photograph you and your family doing exercise at home and bring the photograph to school. And you'd do that, right? And you'd have a physical photograph because it's all fun and funny and all that sort of things. And you'd put it onto the classroom wall. That's fine. It's not digital. It's in the classroom. It's an acceptable form of a photograph. But do the same thing, which is now occurring digitally, and students are being asked to do the exercise, take photos, and upload them. Now, that is a different thing altogether. Once it's digital, it can be compromised, and you take that photograph and you can manipulate it, you can do whatever you like with these photographs, and it's on the internet. That could potentially have dire consequences for a child. And again, common sense. If it's digital, it's not yours. So what are you going to do with it?
I think that's a really good point, and not just for younger kids in terms of, keeping away particularly scary people, but for teenagers as well, what you're uploading and putting onto your social media, how can that be used in 20, 30 years' time when you're going for an executive role or for any particular job? Is that going to come back and basically bite you in the arse?
And this is one of the
to
hardest...
put it really bluntly.
Yeah, it's not a family show, is it? But this is one of the hardest things to put in front of a teenager, and that is for them to consider the consequences in the future, because of course they don't care about the future, they're about the here and the now, right? But I guess what you could be talking to your child about is when you take something. When you take a photo, it's within the context of that photo. You were at a party, it was a great idea to all jump in the pool or whatever it is that you got up to. And it's funny and it's great. Remove the context from that photo and look at it 10 years from now. And that's a very different thing that you need to explain. 10 years from now, you're at a job interview, or you want to enter public life, or you want to do, something in law enforcement. And now it doesn't matter that the photo is right or wrong. The fact is now you have to explain it. Right? And it never sounds as fun as it was when you took that photograph, right? And these are unfortunately the things that the new generation will be facing as their entire teenage years are basically being put online. I think the only saving grace for many of these children will be that hopefully their bosses and the people interviewing them have the same amount of photographs on the internet.
Because look, we all make not the best choices all the time. That's the whole point of growing up and learning. So very grateful that there were no digital photos back when
you and me both
younger. That's a good thing. But I guess this also leads me into the other sort of comment that I made a couple of weeks ago, which was around somebody else saying to me, you don't want to be recorded in terms of whether it's, your phone listening in on you or a video or whatever it might be, or, people basically looking into your life. And I said, what does it matter if you're not doing anything wrong? Like, why does privacy matter if you're not doing anything wrong? And that was a really big thing for me until you sent me through the Glenn Greenwald TED Talk, it was, where he says, if privacy doesn't matter, then give me all of your passwords to all your email accounts and to everything you have. Now, number one, you don't want everybody reading every single email. There's a whole different type of privacy on top of, security around banking details and, identity theft. We still are or want our privacy.
That's right, and I was of a similar mindset to you as well. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm so normal and so boring. Who would watch me? But watching that TED Talk
made me
changed
nobody.
my mind. Hey, if no one's watching, that's great. Doesn't say much for this podcast, mind you. But if you've got nothing to hide, what are you worried about? But at the end of the day, Glenn made some really, really good points. And one of the points he made is that privacy is important because you actually don't know when you're going to need it, right? And we used that example earlier on about what if you later on in life want to enter public life and suddenly you've got this whole legacy of a lifestyle that got you to the great person that you are now, but is difficult to explain, right? The other thing to consider as well is context, once again, right? What made sense at the time, taken out of context, doesn't make sense at all. In fact, in an article that I wrote, I used the example of that's what newspaper headlines do deliberately, right? They take something completely out of context to give you the shock value to open the article. And that's all good if people actually open the articles, but nowadays you just browse through and you start making up your mind as you go along. People don't read the facts anymore. So privacy absolutely does matter. And the final point I want to make on that is privacy is not just about your credit card details. Privacy is about all the things that are simply none of your business, right? That's private. It doesn't have to be good, bad, or indifferent. It's just none of your business. And I'd like to keep it that way.
Yes, I completely agree with you on that. There are things that, I don't know, dancing around the living room singing, it's probably nobody needs to see that. Any kind of like private things. So talking about that as well, going into the professional arena, I've made this comment before around having your video on. I come from an investment banking background where it was 24/7. There weren't video conferences back then. It was all done via the phone. Now we all did our jobs and met our business goals. So, how important is it, or is it even necessary to have your video on? Because obviously you're inviting people into your home at the moment during isolation. Is that really necessary?
So again, this is the nuance that we're talking about, where working from home is no longer something you would do on a Tuesday because it suited you and you matched your meetings to make sure that, while you're at home, you're not going to have any important meetings or external meetings. Now you don't have that choice. You are now primarily working from home. So necessarily all your leadership meetings, your customer meetings, your supplier meetings, all of these people who are now in your home are starting to see more about you than you've had to deal with in the past. Now, is that a good thing? Sure, it's hilarious. You see your leaders now in a t-shirt with a cat interrupting them or a child running in. That's the funny side of getting that personal touch. But there's a not so funny side as well, and that is the very real biases and unconscious bias that people would have when they see you in your home context. So very similar to your child being on a screen, what are you portraying? What's behind you? Is it a filthy kitchen? Are you a neat freak? What's on the bookcase behind you? Is it all about ornithology, or is it about I don't know, pick something crazy, right?
Or do you have a blank wall because your soul is empty?
Yeah. If you take it to the next level, all I'm thinking is, what are you trying to hide? What is on the other side of that wall? So no matter what you put on your screen, somebody's making a judgment call. And
yeah, they are.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's not something you normally deal with. In the corporate world, you get dressed, you go to work, you've got your work persona, which may or may not be the same as your any other day of the week persona. That's a personal thing, but you've built that up. And the reason you've done that is because the only thing your workplace needs to judge you on is whether or not you can do the job. Not what you look like, not what you do on the weekend, not whether your kitchen is a mess or not. This changes slightly when you're inviting everyone into your home. So common sense needs to prevail here as well. To your point as well, do you need video in order to be productive? No, of course you don't. Right? It's a luxury, but it's not mandatory. And I would suggest people should make that decision all by themselves. If you feel like being on a video that morning, knock yourself out. If you don't, that's fine too.
So I think it takes us to another good point just to discuss with our viewers around the COVID-19 app that the government has released. I, for one, have not downloaded the app. I felt that the risk of infection and spread was at a much higher rate, then potentially I would, but with the implications around privacy, I have not. Do you want to give us your thoughts on that, Sven?
Yeah, again, one of those very divisive things which basically splits, doing the right thing, the greater good, doing the community thing, taking one for the team, as it were, versus another aspect of your privacy that you're not necessarily going to be able to control, right? And that's why it's very divisive. And you can see that there's a big push, everyone do the right thing because this is going to help us. When these things happen, you just got to go and peel back the layers and get back to the facts again, right? And this is particular to Australia, insofar as we are well and truly in control of our curve. Our statistics are looking good. I think our government and our citizens have done a magnificent job of curtailing the COVID-19 threat. Then, at the same time, suddenly they're coming out with the Tracer app, the Australian version of that, and it's rushed. It's rushed because they were trying as quickly as possible to get it out and get people to download it. But when you're in the IT industry, when you're in the technology, security and privacy side of the industry, those are alarm bells for the very reasons we've just talked about in terms of why privacy matters. So this comes down to, does the benefit outweigh the risk? And like you, I haven't downloaded the app yet because in my personal circumstances, the benefit doesn't outweigh the risk. Keep in mind that this particular app only does anything when you've been within 5 meters of somebody for more than 15 minutes, right? Now, unless you're having your hair cut or you're in a doctor's waiting room or something like that, that's a unlikely scenario in our lockdowns. But what you wouldn't want is for people to get that false sense of security that no matter where you go, if you jog past or walk past someone with COVID-19, you will be notified. That's not the case, and that's very misleading if you think that is the case. The other side of the thing is as well, when you peel back the layers, is technology is still technology, and behind the app there are servers, and behind the servers there's a cloud, and the cloud is a corporation. And in this particular case, that corporation is an American-owned cloud provider. Now, if you know anything about that, it means that American-owned cloud providers have their own rule sets that are governed by the United States and override our sovereignty over here in many, many cases. So it's not all as rock solid as it needs to be. But I hear you say, or as my uncle, who is 65, said to me, it's just my name and phone number. It's in the phone book. Who cares? You've got to take into account, again, between risk versus reward. Having just another piece of your identity and the location of your identity and the person that you were with being compromised. This is not by the government. Let's assume we all trust the government and the cloud provider. If that information does get out, it's just another piece of a very sophisticated puzzle that identity theft people would put together. Am I saying get off Google, get off Facebook, get off LinkedIn, get off all? No, do what you always do, because you already know the risks of all those things. What I'm trying to say is this is just another piece, and for some it might be the crucial piece. So, does the benefit outweigh the risk? Now, I did download it for my mother because she is in the high risk category. For her, absolutely the benefit outweighs the risk. She goes to shopping centers all the time. I can't tie this woman down, and she's in the high risk category. I would prefer that the government has a way to notify her as quickly as possible if she's been near someone that's infected.
I think those are all really good points, and it's, we're not advising anybody what to do and what not to do. We're just letting them know what we have chosen with all of the facts in front of us. But again, you have to our audience members, you need to take into account all the facts, do your own research and make the decision for yourself.
Yeah, and Beck, I've read too many history books to fall for things that are loosely patriotic or the greater good. That's fine, and that absolutely develops a fervor and a will to act and all those sort of things. But that shouldn't stop you from thinking, and it shouldn't stop you from making an informed decision. Once you're informed, make your decision.
Great. I think that's really good. Thank you so much, Sven. Is there any final thoughts that you have for our viewers?
So I just want to bring it back to the simple and the practical. So if you're a parent and your child is now on the internet or on video conference calls that they haven't been on before, especially the young ones, just have a look at what information you are putting out there. So just picture that open door with all the good, the bad, and the ugly behind it, and make sure that your child is just portraying what they need to portray in order to do their schoolwork. Similarly, in the work environment, be mindful that no matter what is behind you, whether it's a blank wall that you've got or whether you've got my wall behind me, people do make judgments, and this is an extra piece of information that you haven't had to deal with in your professional life previously. So act accordingly and in your own best interests.
Great, thank you. And to all of our DD audience, if you've got any questions or comments, please do go and post on any of our social media pages or head over to ddseries.com. Thanks for listening.